Hello, this is Ross Bliley from the podcast Pigskin Tales. This podcast is sponsored by Sterling Soap Company. With products sold throughout 41 locations around the globe, Sterling Soap Company has a unique assortment of products to choose from for your loved one for the holidays. Handmade artisan soaps created by Roderick and Amanda Lovin since 2012, these products are affordable and provide great value. Act now and save on your shipping costs. If you purchase $75 or more, your shipping cost is free in the United States. Shop now online at sterlingsoap.com.
There's a reason there's never been a mainstream movie about drill instructor training school. A movie like that might humanize them and ruin their mystique. We don't want to sympathize with the drill instructors. We want to hate, fear, and worship them, all at the same time. And like our chicken nuggets and our hot dogs, we don't want to see how they're put together. We just want to believe they're born that way. Even if the real-life drill instructors aren't hot-headed, foul-mouthed disciplinarians from the moment they're born, it sure can seem that way with their cinematic equivalents. Take Gunnery Sergeant Hartman from Full Metal Jacket, for instance. He has no backstory, no hometown, and no first name. He is hellfire walking, brimstone talking, a creature born in the recesses of our collective nightmare. The slightest hint that he comes from somewhere or someone would dispel his menacing aura, so we never see or hear it. All we need to know is that men like him exist. Sergeant Slaughter doesn't have a first name either. He's just Sergeant Slaughter, a Vietnam vet with a sharp campaign hat and mirrored sunglasses. He's billed as being from Parris Island, South Carolina, but that's a Marine base, not a hometown. And it's probably not a fine point anyone should take up with a 6'6", 305-pound wrestler. Hey, do what you want. I'm just saying. The wrestler who performs Sergeant Slaughter does have a name and backstory, however. His name is Robert Rudolph Remus. He made his debut in 1974, wrestling for the American Wrestling Association, AWA. Even though he gained a modicum of notoriety wrestling in the AWA and Japan, it wasn't until 1980 that he truly hit his stride. That was the year he became Sergeant Slaughter. Professional wrestling would never be the same again. And frankly, neither would I. A massive jawline beneath a pencil-thin mustache, a tree-trunk neck with a gleaming silver whistle swinging from it. In my 10-year-old mind, this was how the ideal drill instructor should look. And soon enough, I wanted to wear a smart soldier uniform too. It was my way of looking strong and authoritative. Because of my newfound affinity for the military uniform, I urged my dad to sign me up for the Blue Jackets Guard, a naval youth organization for boys and girls aged 9 to 18. I saw them walking around my Brooklyn neighborhood all the time, wearing their stark white sailor hats and Cracker Jack dress jumpers. I just had to join them, no matter what. But no matter what didn't fly with my dad. The Blue Jacket uniform was expensive, and so was the membership. To appease me, my dad signed me up for the Cub Scouts instead. It was less expensive, but also less regimented than the Blue Jackets. Something about my personality rightfully told him I wasn't ready for the regimentation. It turned out that I wasn't ready for the Cub Scouts either. I quit after only 3 meetings. And although that foray into the world of groupthink should have made it clear I wasn't exactly soldier material, I still had this nagging desire to join a team, to wear a uniform, to look like Sergeant Slaughter. But as the old saying goes, looks can be deceiving. Sergeant Slaughter wasn't exactly what he claimed to be. Robert Rudolph Remus was never in the military. He had several draft deferments and is even, this part's hard to say, even an alleged Vietnam War protester. I know. I don't begrudge his anti-war activism. It just flies in the face of the military lore so many of us fans grew up believing. He wasn't a Vietnam vet, and he wasn't a Marine drill instructor. Hey, it was a gimmick. A fictional character. There's no blaming him for that. But years later, Remus would be criticized for claiming a personal connection to military service outside of the Sergeant Slaughter character. Remus's claims may be considered controversial today, but when I was a kid, wrestling fans my age were dogmatic about wrestling kayfabe. If Sergeant Slaughter said he was a former Marine drill instructor, then gosh darn it, that's what he was, and there was no way to convince us otherwise, even if Robert Rudolph Remus himself said so. And if somebody said their cousin was in boot camp and Sergeant Slaughter was his drill instructor, and the cousin had the graduation book with Slaughter's photo in it to prove it,
then that was all the proof I needed.
Years later, when I was in Fort Eustis, Virginia, completing the Advanced Individual Training, AIT, for my chosen military occupational specialty, I finally got the chance to ask some real Marines if Sergeant Slaughter had actually been a drill instructor. The 3 Marines swore up and down he had been. They had all seen his photo in a boot camp graduation book, a graduation book no one could offer up as evidence, mind you. This elusive Marine graduation book became the holy grail of Marine graduation books.
I promised myself I would track down the book as soon as I returned home from AIT. The last phase of military training I had to get past to escape the tyranny of the drill sergeants who controlled my existence for the last 3 months. All my time and effort were channeled toward that end. I hated day-to-day military life, and I hated dressing in military uniforms. Finally, that demon was outside of my body. Where it went after, I have no idea, but it was outside my body, so that was a good thing. When I arrived home, I gave up on the idea of searching for the mythical graduation book everybody and nobody had seen, and instead redirected my energy toward getting rid of my graduation book. The front of the thin hardcover book was labeled Fort Knox, Kentucky, 4th Training Brigade. At the center of the cover was a drawing of combat tanks and cavalry horses in a windswept desert framed by a very ugly blue and yellow color scheme. As ugly as the cover was, it wasn't what I hated most about the book. It was the comments my fellow graduates scribbled onto the inside covers of the book that really pissed me off. They called me 8 up. In military shorthand, being 8, like the number 8 dash up, means you're a subpar soldier, which was absolutely true during my basic training at Fort Knox. Actually, subpar is putting it mildly. I was a complete disaster. How bad was I? Well, golly, I'll put it to you this way. I made Gomer Pyle look like Rambo. Nobody in my graduating class thought to write that. They weren't clever enough. But their comments were along those lines. I don't think my fellow graduates intended to be cruel. They were probably just aiming for that good-natured ribbing military humor is known for. Hey, I can take a joke, and I can give it back, too. But when everyone's writing the same things, 8 up this and 8 up that, all those 8s start lining up, and you say to yourself, wait, this isn't a graduation book. It's a long-form math equation, the sum of which is only a partial assessment of who I was during basic training. It wasn't all me fumbling and bumbling my way through basic training. I provided a lot of laughs during basic training through impersonations. I did impersonations of wrestlers like Hulk Hogan, Randy Macho Man Savage, Jimmy Superfly Snuka, and of course, Sergeant Slaughter. And through pure happenstance, I learned to imitate other drill sergeants too, namely the ones training us. I love the smell of Narcan in the morning. What was I talking about? Oh, okay. Doing these imitations was a double-edged sword. Sometimes I got command invites to the drill sergeant mess hall to perform for them like some resident court jester, but mostly it just made me fodder for punishment from the drill sergeants who didn't appreciate my sense of humor one bit, especially if they were the butt of the joke. In the movie Stripes, Sergeant Hulka didn't appreciate Bill Murray's sense of humor one bit either. I heard of that guy. In fact, he thought Bill Murray's character, John Winger, was a total piece of garbage. He hates Winger so much he invites him to take a swing at him. It's one of the best scenes in the movie, and it plays out like this. It's time you and me had a private talk, Winger. Step into my office. Getting the idea, Winger, that you don't like me. Maybe I just don't know you well enough yet, Sarge. What do you say we cut out the bullshit between you and me, huh? Oh, let's. I think you're a punk. I've been in this army 28 years. I've seen your kind come and go. You think you know something about everything, don't you? Well, let me tell you something, mister. You don't know a damn thing about soldiering.
Oh, it's real tough stuff, Sarge. Especially that marching in a straight line business.
I ain't talking about that crap. I'm talking about something important, like discipline and duty and honor and courage. And you ain't got none of it.
Those words mean so much to a man who scrubs garbage cans. Look, if you don't want me in your army, kick me out. But get off my back.
Maybe you'd like to take a swing at me.
I'd like to take a big swing at you, Sarge.
Well, go ahead and give it your best shot.
I don't think I want to go to the stockade.
I'll take my hat off. There we are, Winger. Ain't no more drill sergeant. It's just you and me, kid. Man to man. So, go ahead. Give it your best shot. Swing at me. Gutless. Punk. I'm willing to forget this little incident, and I want you to think real hard about it. And maybe someday you'll understand what the hell I'm talking about.
Variations of this scene can be found in many military movies, from A Soldier's Story to An Officer and a Gentleman to G.I. Jane and Biloxi Blues. What happens is this. The nonconformists among the trainees earn the drill sergeant's ire. Then they're goaded into fighting the drill sergeant by the drill sergeants themselves, and then they get their asses handed to them, sometimes disgracefully and sometimes honorably, but always painfully. And that's their comeuppance for trying to buck the system, for trying to be an individual. Or maybe, like me, they just had a very punchable face. That had to be why our senior drill sergeant challenged me to duke it out with him. He must have thought I had a very punchable face. Maybe it was part of some psychological team-building exercise. Who the hell knows why? But it came like a bolt from out of the blue. One minute, the platoon was sitting in a tight circle listening to him go over his military experience. The next minute, he'd locked eyes with me, talking about people who think they're tougher than they really are. People who are out to prove something. I was neither of those, but he seemed pretty sure I was. He called me out in front of the whole platoon, and for a brief millisecond, I almost took him up on his offer to fight him. But I was held back. by my strong instinct for self-preservation. The senior drill sergeant may not have looked like Sergeant Slaughter, but he was very tough-looking in his own right. He was 6'4", lean and broad-shouldered. He knew jiu-jitsu and looked a lot like the actor Hal Williams. Williams played Sergeant L.C. Ross in the film Private Benjamin. Check Williams out in that movie and tell me if you'd be willing to go toe-to-toe with him or his twin brother. If you'd be willing to do that, you're a better man than me, mister. Here's the crazy thing. I deeply regret not taking the senior drill sergeant up on his fight challenge. I know I would have stood a chance against Sergeant Hal. I'm calling him Sergeant Hal from here on in, but it could have greatly changed the course of my life to accept his challenge. Yes, it could have landed me in the hospital, the stockade, or discharged from the Army altogether, but it also could have earned me the respect of my fellow trainees, or Sergeant Hal himself, just for making a stand against him. It could have been seen by many as a gutsy decision. Reckless and stupid too, but mostly gutsy. I have never stopped thinking about what was waiting for me on the other side of that ass-kicking. When I think about it now, cynically and with the cool detachment of a psychoanalyst, I'm embarrassed for wanting to gain the platoon's approval. I'm embarrassed for wanting to gain Sergeant Hal's approval. It was his approval that mattered the most to me anyway. It wasn't like I was going to see Hal or any of these people ever again, and who's to say standing up to Sergeant Hal would have changed my reputation as a screw-up. What if that was exactly what everyone expected an ate-up individual to do, get into a physical fight with a drill sergeant? And who's to say my self-esteem would have fared any better after graduation than it had while I was just a green recruit? See? Lots of questions.
I didn't have the heart to trash my graduation book, so I buried it deep in a storage bin in my attic, a place I only go once a year to gather Halloween and Hanukkah ornaments. And because I never get the slightest inkling to dig up that book, it stays buried like some chained-up sea monster at the bottom of a dark Scottish lake. The Marine graduation book proving Sergeant Slaughter was indeed a Marine drill instructor on Parris Island was probably buried in the same dark lake, if it even existed in the first place. I am willing to bet the farm it didn't. Like I said before, we were dogmatic about our kayfabe, but everyone has to grow up sometime. I wonder how many young kids thought Sergeant Slaughter was just a cartoon character on the G.I. Joe animated series of the 1980s, and not an actual person. Did they know the character was based on a real professional wrestler? According to the Wikipedia overview of the Sergeant Slaughter G.I. Joe character, he's a drill instructor with a mission to train recruits into military. He's known for exaggerating his career and is credited with superhuman feats like drilling trainees for 72 hours straight. He's also qualified to drive many of the Joe's vehicles, but pushes them past their limits, believing that nothing will give you a break on the battlefield. While Sergeant Slaughter, the cartoon character, was pushing G.I. Joe vehicles beyond their limits, Vince McMahon was busy pushing the Sergeant Slaughter wrestling character beyond its limits. Slaughter went from heel to face in early 1984, feuding with the Iron Sheik regularly as a super patriot defending the honor of the United States against Iran's evil emissary. Then, after a 5-year hiatus, Slaughter returned to the WWF as a heel once again. This time, he was an Iraqi sympathizer who favored Iraq's brutality over America's wartime softness. His new alignment with Iraq pissed off so many fans, he started receiving death threats and had to wear a bulletproof vest wherever he went. To turn the hate factor up a notch or three, McMahon asked Slaughter to burn the American flag. Slaughter refused. Good for him. He was already pushing the envelope, wearing Arab headdresses to the ring and spewing anti-American rhetoric. How much more dangerous did McMahon want this man's job to become? In 1991, A mere few days after the start of the first Gulf War, Sergeant Slaughter became the 13th holder of the WWF Championship. It was a championship he would later lose to Hulk Hogan. After the feuding with Hogan, Slaughter turned face again. In a series of bittersweet vignettes, Sergeant Slaughter was shown lamenting the split between him and the United States, as if the falling out was America's fault and not his. He wanted his country back, the way people pine for their old exes. It was a bit weird, but not totally unsympathetic. Did all these character arcs help make Sergeant Slaughter more human than he had been at the start of his wrestling career? Or were these arcs too erratic and treacherous? In real life, Sergeant Slaughter's traitorous activities would not have been forgotten so easily. The good news today is Sergeant Slaughter doesn't have to put up with the seesaw storylines McMahon forced upon him. Today, he is 76 years old and retired. His loyalty to the WWE and his legendary career have made him an ambassador for the WWE. He was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2004. Slaughter remains the only G.I. Joe character based on a living human being. He's apologized for any misleading comments he made about his military service. In some interviews, he's even cited his inspiration for the creation of Sergeant Slaughter. It was a 1957 movie called The D.I., starring Jack Webb from the TV show Dragnet as the title character. Webb plays a strict drill instructor who's charged with making a Marine out of a capable recruit who doesn't believe in himself enough to get through basic training. The movie got positive reviews, and Webb's performance was considered one of his best. I haven't seen it myself, but I have to believe Jack Webb did a hell of a job if he inspired Robert Rudolph Remus to think a drill instructor would make an amazing villainous character. And that's as much a glimpse as we'll get into the nuts and bolts of the assembly of a drill instructor. All we really need to know is men like Sergeant Slaughter exist on film and in life. If you want to see anything more about how these engines of fury are put together, you'll have to take a tour of the factory yourself. You've been listening to Wrestling with Heels On. Join me in 2 weeks, maybe, and we'll march down Villainy Lane together. Only on the Sports History Network.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you got to do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you got to do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.